Thanks for tuning in. Deborah KOBYLT Live. And with me now, we have entrepreneurial person who has her own business, Jacqlyn Resnick. Is that how we say your name?
That is how we say it.
But I love the business you're in. You're a beautiful... We have a huge studio audience for you here, Jacqlyn. You can see that.
Thank you.
It grows with each guest. There's more and there's more and there's more coming. You're beautiful. You look like you're an entrepreneur, if you will, and you look like you could be running any business, a fashion business. But you run something very interesting. You are the founder of Mold USA. Now, when my producer brought this to me, I'm like, mold? What? And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Mold is a big deal. Everybody's got mold. Everybody's breathing in mold. I just had mold. There's panic about mold. So you're here with Mold USA to explain a little bit about mold, the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, because we've all had it, right?
Correct.
I like your story. You started this business with your dad, Paul, some time ago. He was in construction and you were in real estate. And he did a lot of reconstruction, remodeling with hotels and commercial buildings. And you did a lot of selling of real estate. And no matter where you go, that stuff shows up, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's water damage.
It's water damage. So would you say, look at the kind of winter we just had in California, for example. It rained a lot. I built my house and we have a basement. And I ended up, we were in downstairs and I have a little gym down there. And I thought, oh, there's black dots on the wall. Oh my God, I have mold. And I panicked and I called my guy, my contractor. I didn't call a mold guy and I should have called a mold guy, huh?
Right.
Big mistake. But he's a good guy. Hopefully he got rid of it right. But tell me what people need to look for.
Okay, well, Mold 101 is basically what I call it. And effectively, mold is present 100% of the time, everywhere. Ugh. So we're breathing it right now, you and I. It's perfectly harmless, typically. But when you have any type of water damage, the mold that's naturally occurring and normally very safe gravitates toward the surfaces, whatever those damp surfaces may be.
And you notice how it always sort of gravitates toward the drywall, and it sticks to the drywall. And in fact, I was talking to someone about that, the guy who built Ed Begley Jr.'s house, Scott Harris, and he was telling me they have new products now where it's not like cardboardish, where it's going to, like a sponge where it's going to absorb it.
Right.
You know, so they have other products they can use now, right, other than the drywall.
There are products. They're just more expensive.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, unless you're building a custom home, unless you're building your own home, typically
they don't use it.
Normal developers aren't going to go and use pricey materials.
I would have used it.
Reason.
It wasn't presented to me. Maybe it wasn't even around at the time 7 years ago. I would have used it, especially in the basement.
Right.
Absolutely. So Mold 101, basically, if you smell it or if you feel like you're breathing something in?
Well, you don't even always have to smell it or feel it for it to be present or problematic, and vice versa. Just because you do see it or smell it isn't going to mean it's toxic or harmful to you.
Right.
And so ideally, obviously, it only takes 24 to 48 hours for mold to begin to grow in a damp environment, and it can continue as long as there's elevated moisture. And when we talk about elevated moisture, it has to fall below a 15% level, which to your touch, even 40% would feel dry to your touch. It might feel cool. You touch a wall, it feels cool, but not wet. It still has the ability potentially to be growing mold.
And basically you get that mold because there's absolutely no air. It's trapped, right? There's really no airflow coming in.
Well, there is airflow, but it really 100% boils down to the moisture level that's present.
I see.
So you can have air, but as long as you have that moisture, the mold is going to go there because that's where it feeds, it flourishes, that's where it has the ability to grow. And so it will grow until the moisture drops below a safe level. And at the time that the mold stops growing, if mold grew at the time, that is when there's no more moisture, it has the ability to become dry. And when it becomes dry, that's when it becomes dusty. And when it's dry and dusty, that is when people might start having health effects from it. Not when it's growing.
Doesn't it kind of turn white? It's almost powdery when it's dry?
Different types of molds can turn white.
What's the kind that turns white? Because I had that underneath the exercise mats in my gym, and I was like, and I got rid of it.
There are multiple kinds, but the one that the media likes to call the black mold, that a lot of times starts black and becomes white as it becomes heavily concentrated. So nobody should judge mold by the color that they think it is. Nobody should look and, go running for your life every time you see something that's black in color, nor should you brush it off if you see it and think it's white and therefore it's harmless, because they do change, and there are thousands of molds and lots of them are black. Lots
Okay.
of them, they come in every color.
I got to tell you what my husband did. So I put the mats and I rolled them out onto the basement floor. And he came home and he saw that they were probably, I didn't want them anymore. And he picked them up kind of like this. And he was walking up the stairs with them. I'm like, no. And I must have mold spores everywhere now, right? Because that white powdery stuff was going up the stairs, into the living room, out the door. And I'm thinking, oh, no, 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 no. I want to take it out the back, seal it up. So now does this mean I have these mold spores everywhere in my house?
Well, potentially that's a really great way to spread it, and you were 100% right. Before you go and move a material that's moldy like that, especially visibly moldy,
Seal it up.
bag it up before you start removing it. You don't want to drag it through your house, because that is when you can allow things to get everywhere. Now, just because it might fall off and go airborne in another area doesn't necessarily mean it's going to start growing rampantly. But if he dragged it through a kitchen where you're cooking all the time and you're steaming it up all the time, or through a bathroom where you're taking 2-3 showers a day and it's always constantly moist, you run the risk that if you bring something in there, it's going to have the ability to grow. So it's important not to spread things.
Is there a difference between, because we were talking about color, is there a difference between green mold and black mold? And what do you do when you see it automatically right there on, let's say, your drywall, like I did? What should you do?
It's really going to depend on what caused it to be there. So, for instance, if you're talking about most people that have a kind of a panic attack because they see mold and it's in their shower, growing in the grout and the cracks, et
Right,
cetera.
that's different.
Typically it is. Typically that would just be a different thing, and people panicking. It might just be because they're not drying it, and it's naturally going to accumulate there. And people say, oh, that's just mildew, which, by the way, mildew is mold. It's just a less scary word
It's a
for it.
nicer word for mold.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
a nicer word. But usually that's not an issue if it's just growing on some tile, et cetera.
So you can get the bleach out and just sort of get rid of the mold.
You can. But ideally, even when you're getting bleach out, and if it's in a shower situation and it's minimal, that's okay. But if it's anything heavier than that, what you want to make sure and you realize is that it's a living, breathing organism. And when you take a bottle and you spray it with mold, those spores are going to go airborne.
Yeah.
Some of it you're going to get off the surface, but some of it's just going to go airborne. You can't see it. It's microscopic. It's going to land in the next damp place. So when you're trying to get something off of a surface, you're much better off to soak a rag in a bleach and water solution, cover it entirely, and then come with your hands from the outside of the rag in, so that you close it into that rag and it doesn't have the ability to go airborne.
Who is affected most from mold? Like, I'm going to give you an example. I can walk into a room and I can almost detect if it's damp, and I will absolutely, if it's too much, the next day I will just have trouble breathing. Whereas my husband can walk in and he won't detect it, he won't feel it, and he's fine. So, which means it affects people differently.
It's very subjective.
Yeah.
Most people, if you're you're not immune compromised, you don't have allergies, you're just a normal, healthy individual, a lot of times you won't be affected whatsoever. Whereas some people, especially infants and small children, and of course elderly people and immune compromised, those are the people
with asthma.
Asthma.
I have
any
asthma. That's why
respiratory
it affects me. Yeah.
Yeah, respiratory issues. You're going to be affected much more easily than somebody that may have no health issues whatsoever. They can walk in and be present for a long period of time and may never so much as get an itchy, watery eye or throat, never sneeze, cough, or anything.
I mean, the big story that everyone remembers, of course, was Ed McMahon, right? I mean, if people remember that, I don't know, but I do.
Right.
And a lot of my friends do. And that's why whenever you hear the 4-letter word mold, people run into a panic. I think, how the heck did mold grow into in his entire home? I don't get how that happened.
Well, he was one of the primary people in Southern California that ended up bringing this whole industry to a forefront the way it is, because he had extensive water damage in that property, and they were getting sick, but they didn't know. And at the time,
So it was hidden. You couldn't even see it on the walls.
It was hidden. And so a lot of times when you have water damage, it happens underneath floors. It
Right.
happens behind the walls. Sometimes one of my clients who had the most amazing homes I've ever seen ever, and it was white. Everything was white. Floors, carpeting. It was all glass windows. It was up in the Hollywood Hills, so you had views forever. It was one of the most beautiful homes I've
But
ever
horrible
seen.
drainage and it was accumulating mold underneath. Yeah.
Well, not even that. What happened in her home is she just thought that she was getting allergies because the air was so dry, and she decided that she was going to install in her home a humidification system because she liked the air to be a little bit more moist. And so she installed a house-wide humidification system.
Bad
And
idea.
it grew, but nowhere visible, but it grew under the carpets. It grew in the walls. It grew all over the place. There was no smell. It was not visible anywhere. But when we got in there and checked her home, it was by far, to this day, 17 years later, the most toxic home I had ever been in.
Oh, so what did you do?
Well, she had to leave immediately. And it's not often that I will tell somebody,
Get out.
Get out. But she had to get out then and there because it was really, really getting to her. And, she, that was the answer.
So what does your company do in a case like that? If somebody thinks they have mold or if they do have mold, what do? You go in and assess the situation? What if you think you have it, but you're not sure? What do you do?
Right. Typically, we try and determine our very first question is always going to be, has there been water damage that you're aware of? A lot of people are not aware of.
Right, because you're right. It does happen underneath. And you just don't know. Yeah.
It also happens. Some of the biggest culprits that we find out there are in the bathrooms. When you take a shower, most people have at the shower head, they have a ring. And that ring that kind of turns around at the top, it should be affixed to the wall. If you can spin that ring, if you can pull it away from the
water
wall,
gets in the back.
Every time you take a shower, water typically can get into that wall. And what happens is that wall begins to retain
Soften,
moisture.
yeah.
And as moisture is getting into that wall, mold spores are getting into that wall. So that wall can be filling up with mold without your knowledge. And so what I explain to people often is when you start to see something growing on a wall, if you wipe it off, if you clean it off, and it continues to come back in the exact same location, chances are you're giving it a haircut. You're not getting rid of it because it's coming from the inside through. And those are situations typically where the only way you're going to be able to fix the problem
Cut the wall.
is if you do remediation. But imperative for everybody to understand, one of the other biggest mistakes people make is cutting a wall open to look inside, to see if there's something going on. You cut a wall open to look. If it's actually full of mold, you're too late. You've just let it out into the air. You can't get it back. So before you make any reasonable cut in a wall, especially if you know there's been moisture or water damage, you want to make sure that whomever is going to be cutting actually contains the area first. It doesn't have to be a massive containment, but it should be at least enough so that if somebody opens a wall,
Well, you need a
they're
professional.
stopping it.
It's like you need a doctor to go. If you're getting surgery, you need a surgeon. You need someone who's a professional like yourself to do this.
Ideally, well, we don't ever cut walls.
You don't?
We
Okay.
don't. We will never cut a wall.
So
We
you
can
go
check-
in and what do? You go in and assess what's
Well,
going
we go
on?
in and assess. We test. So we do the inspection. We check for hidden leaks you're unaware of, moisture intrusion coming from the exterior through. We check all your water sources. We go under sinks, behind toilets, water heaters. We use moisture meters, infrared cameras. And if we need to know what's behind a wall, we do cavity testing where rather than cutting a big hole and looking inside, we place a small hole about the size of a pencil into the wall and insert a tube into that cavity. And that way we remove what's in there without allowing it to come out. We fill the hole and then we can tell you what is in there, what type it is, how heavy it is, and that helps us know what needs to be done from there. And once we know what is going on, also testing the ambient air to see what you're breathing would assist us in knowing whether if the mold is very much in the wall but it has not come out of the wall, we know that it's a small containment up against the wall, repairing inside, and it's not going to be as big of an issue. Whereas if it's already gone airborne, then at that point, the containment has to include the entire area.
And the number one thing people need to know, and this is really important, don't do it yourself because you're right. If you cut it open by someone, it's got to be sealed. You need a professional to come in and seal it, right?
Correct.
Because otherwise it's just going to spread everywhere. And I knew that, but what can I say? You know, I may have spores around my house at this point. Hopefully not. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, aside from just finding a professional, people need to understand that this is an unregulated industry. There is no licensing. There's no contractors board looking out for what's going on there. And unfortunately, like with most things,
so much is regulated now with building. Why
it's
not
regulated
mold?
in other states,
Yeah,
but it
not
hasn't
here.
happened here yet. And so what happens is most people are cost driven. Most people are running around looking for the lowest bid. And what happens is, unfortunately, in an industry like this where you don't know, you can't see the mold, you don't know how heavy it is. And as long as me or the next person knows the tiniest bit more than you, they can convince you that they know what they're doing. And so somebody can come in and they may not be legitimate, but they can walk in and because they know a little bit more than you, they can scare you to pieces by telling you something's dangerous when it's really not. And additionally, they can go and charge you a lot of money to do work that may or may not be necessary. And then if you trust them and you don't have the knowledge or the wherewithal to have an independent third party that's reputable come in and clearance test it, you may pay somebody, they may leave, and they never removed any mold.
Well, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people will have regular maintenance with their air ducts or their air conditioning or I don't know, whatever. I just think it's important to add that to your maintenance list. You know, have a company like yourselves to come in and just do some testing. You know,
Right.
I have done that because I'm a little bit paranoid about it because of my asthma. I've built houses a couple of times that we've lived in. I did it myself and designed it myself and all that. And I was always very on top of that kind of a thing, just because I know how it can be. How did you get into this business, the mold business?
Very accidentally. As you said earlier, my father had been, for years and years, he renovated hotels. And I worked for him for a while in that industry as well, but I also sold real estate for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. And back around 2000, 2001, around the Ed McMahon time, people were starting to take notice of the mold situation and the water damage situation, and it started to become something that laws were changing, disclosure laws were changing in real estate.
That was important too.
And
disclosure laws.
Disclosure.
I mean, the fact that they didn't have to disclose something like that or that they didn't think it was a big deal, they looked at it as mildew.
Correct.
You know, and mildew is just something you sort of get on the tile and scrub it away, and we all know differently now. So.
Right. And as a result of that, we started looking around and knew that there were very few companies in the Southern California area, Los Angeles area, that actually dealt with it. And so at that time, I went off, and there was nowhere really in California to learn, but I went to Florida, I went to Texas, I went to Maryland. I went pretty much all over where they did know and have mold issues, and that's where I learned everything there was to learn about it and became certified, and we started a company, my father and I, back in 2000, and we had a presence. By the time the laws changed, we had a presence with the real estate community and others, and at that point, it just kind of went forward from there. Although at that time we did both. We did remediation as well as inspection. And now since it's become a very big thing, and because there's no regulation, it really is a conflict of interest to do both. So we decided...
Right, because you go in there and say, oh, mister, you got so much. It's like, what a minute. So, yeah, you're better off just hands off. So,
we don't have any incentive to find a mold problem where it doesn't exist, but we're exceptionally honest. So if you have
That's
a problem...
why you're on here. We've done our research
You're
on
going to
you.
know about it.
Yeah. So an entrepreneurial woman. It's great to have you on, Jacqlyn. What do you do in your free time when you're not dealing with mold?
Oh, goodness. I don't have a lot of free time, but when I'm not dealing with mold, I'm a mom.
Mom of
an almost 7-year-old lovely little boy, Nicholas.
I have 3 boys.
Aww. See,
I'm not going to tell you they stay lovely when they're older. No, they do. I'm just kidding. They stay lovely forever. So boys are incredible.
Well, he's the light of my life.
Oh, that's adorable. That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
So when you're not dealing with the mold issues, which are pretty massive, especially in California, Los Angeles, with the rains we had this winter.
Yes.
You're with your adorable son.
I'm with my adorable son.
And you work with your dad.
Actually, my dad no longer is working. I do other things with my dad, but my dad has since retired.
Good for Paul.
Yes, good for him.
Good for him. But he started this whole thing and he got you on a journey of being a business owner. So I think that's pretty wonderful.
He did.
So Jacqlyn Resnick, president and founder of Mold USA. I really appreciate your coming in and just sort of shedding some light on the whole issue. Any parting words you want to give us?
No, I like I said, I appreciate you having had me here, and really, the most important thing is knowledge. Don't let anybody pull the wool over your eyes, and somebody that has an incentive to make a lot of repairs, don't really believe them if they make a site on, no testing, looking at something they don't know how to fix the
And
problem.
I have to tell you, getting your home tested for mold like what you do is really not that costly. And if you get it removed the right way, that's also not that costly either. Frankly, most of the time, the wrong guys who are out there removing it probably are even more expensive, because I found that in my own personal life. So, do it the right way. Do it one way and do it the right way. That's what I always say.
And that's very good advice. The other thing is be careful, though, because when you find a company that tailors prices to the neighborhood you live in, the size of your home, like our prices are the same whether we're doing something in, downtown Los Angeles, South Central Compton, or Bel Air.
That is so important.
There's no difference. So it is what it is, period. It doesn't matter if you're famous or you're, struggling to survive. Our pricing is the same, and that's what you have to be careful of as well.
Yeah, no, you're right. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your knowledge. And everybody will see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in to DEBORAH KOBYLT Live, and have a good week.